Good morning. Today we're here to present the Distinguished Alumnus Award. This is the highest honor that the Alumni Association presents, and it first started in 1975. I'll give you a little bit of insight into the award. Specifically, this award is to be presented annually by the Jesuit Alumni Association to an alumnus whose life exemplifies in an exceptional way the religious, academic, family, and social values set before him during his years as a Jesuit student. To be considered for this honor, the recipient must possess remarkable qualities of both spiritual and civic leadership, which have won for him the respect, confidence, and affection of his colleagues and the community. The past recipients includes alumni from 6 generations of Jesuit history and represent 11,000 living alumni. Through their excellence in service, philanthropy, and love for their fellow man, we are very honored to have those of you that Mr. Ursing called out earlier, the distinguished alumnuses. For a little more insight into our 40th recipient of the Distinguished Alumni Award, I'm going to invite Dr. Bob Morgan from the class of 1971 and himself a 2010 Distinguished Alumnus recipient to come up and say a few words. Dr. Bob.
Morning. Mr. Ursing, Mr. Garrison, Jesuits faculty, staff, honored guests, but most importantly, the students. I can't tell you what an honor it is to stand here and talk about one of my best friends. Last night I was trying to determine what I would say, and the first thing I'll say, when we set out there many, many years ago, no offense, Joe, there was no reason I thought you'd be up here. Me, you, anybody. I was worried about my next date, how cool my car looked, and getting my college essay done, and trying to determine what classes I could cut and not get in trouble. The answer is none, by the way. And then I started looking at what Joe's done and what you all do. And I realized this ain't so hard because you guys are Joe. You're a bunch of Jesuit guys, like-minded, that, as we say at the hospital, get it. Joe gets it. I work at Children's Medical Center, so a lot of you guys roll through there, and sometimes you're coming to comfort somebody who's sick, sometimes you're coming to comfort somebody who's got a dying child. Sometimes you volunteer. But the Jesuit guys show up. That was my talk a few years ago. For whatever reason, the Jesuit guys show up. You guys are Joe Hughes, and you show up, you come early, you stay late, and you give more than anybody else. And then it's always followed by the tagline, and this is my favorite part. Somebody goes, "Did you see that kid? Man, what a great kid. He really gets it." And then somebody goes, "You know, he goes to Jesuit." And I go, "I went there." And that's the deal. You're Joe. Now, Joe and I honestly had no idea that he would be up here or that I'd get to speak. But if you watch Joe after he left, he's a true Jesuit guy. He hit the ground running. He grabbed me and drugged me to A&M, and I've been trying to keep up with him ever since. I get to say, I know Joe Hughes. That was a big deal at A&M. Joe listened a lot. I didn't think he did, but the Jesuits used to say it maybe not be important about money and power and prestige. Perhaps you should find your place in life. And then perhaps you should find somebody to share that with. And that's Holly. You'll get to see her up in here. The story on Joe is he's a vault. If you tell him a secret, no one will ever know. Not so much with me. They're laughing because they know it's true. But Holly has hid a secret from Joe her entire life. And I had to tell Joe last night. She is smarter than you. But she married you, so that shows she's got good judgment. They got a couple great kids. Little Joe, which is an oxymoron at 6'5", who towers over everybody, who went to Jesuit, and Katie, a loving daughter, who went to Ursuline. And I promise you, you're sitting out there going like, I'm not going to do what Joe Hughes did, but you will. Jesuit's a special place and it breeds special men. And I am so honored to honor Joe. And I'm going to ask you to take a second and watch the video, and then you'll get to see what Jesuit men do. Thank you.
Jesuit College Preparatory School of Dallas is proud to recognize Joseph V. Hughes, Jr. from the class of 1971 as the Distinguished Alumnus of the Year. Born and raised from humble beginnings in Dallas, Joseph V. Hughes was Catholic educated for most of his life. His parents instilled in him the importance of sacrifice and servitude, qualities that were reflected in their willingness to use commissions from side jobs so that their son could have the opportunity to attend Jesuit. Hughes' servant experience at Jesuit started in the late 1970s as a member of the Alumni Advisory Committee. In 1982, he was named president of the Alumni Board. Hughes began his first stint on the Jesuit College Preparatory School Board of Trustees in 1988, a role he reprised several times over the course of 4 decades. Joe and his wife Holly have been guided by the importance of giving and the philanthropic sense to support the causes they care about. There is a special place in their hearts for Jesuit, and that has been demonstrated through a generous and sustained spirit of giving to the school. The family's namesake adorns Hughes Hall, one of the most prominent and recognizable spaces on the Jesuit campus. For over 40 years, Joe Hughes helped guide the growth of Jesuit Dallas with a sparkling record of service and benevolence that has literally transformed the space in which our students learn. His extraordinary spiritual and civic leadership has created a legacy modeled as a man for others.
Joe and I have been friends forever, and Joe will tell you, at Jesuit, he wasn't captain of the football team. He wasn't a straight A student. He wasn't the most popular, but like everybody else at Jesuit, he got it in his heart. When he left to A&M, I didn't know I was going to A&M the last minute, and he took me along the way and showed me the ropes. There's so many things Joe's done right. Most people don't know he was one of the first civilian Yale leaders in A&M's history. And they talk about Joe and what a great guy he is. And we're a lot alike. Not that we're great guys, but we both married up. And you can't say Joe Hughes without Holly.
Well, from the time I first met him, I knew that Joe had a very strong affinity to Jesuit. It was interesting because he remembered all of his teachers, and he remembered the subjects, and he remembered going out on field trips with them. And I compared that to my high school experience, and there was none of that. So it was clear that the Jesuit spirit was really part of him to the core.
I think my dad's love for Jesuit stems from his roots of learning to be a man for others. He's raised my brother and I in a way to serve and give back to the community, and of course I learned that back at Ursuline as well. But he's lived his whole life being a man of God and a man who wants to serve the community and help others, which I really aspire to be.
He definitely cares about the people around him. He does a lot of stuff in terms of charities and organizations and helping people out.
You know, Joe started out as an accountant, and then he kind of got a job working for the Cowboys owner, and then started his own company, and then started his own accounting company, and then his own oil and gas company, and then he's built this huge, successful business. But at the end of it, Joe's done it right from day one. Joe always gave. Joe gave when it wasn't easy to give. And, you know, I think that says a lot for him. It says a lot for Jesuit. And I think that's one of the reasons he's that way.
I think my dad continues to support Jesuit because I think he still thinks he's a student there.
I've had the privilege of knowing Joe for quite a while, though I know he's going to say that I taught him. I did not teach him here at Jesuit. He already had graduated long before I started working here at Jesuit. When I think about Joe, and I know this would be embarrassing to him, I would consider him to be sort of our St. Peter Favor. You know, Joe is quiet and does a lot behind the scenes, but he's very hard on himself.
All of the people that I meet who went to Jesuit, that's a bond that's stronger than any other that I've seen. The concept of men for others really becomes part and parcel to who they are. It's not a phrase or a motto or, you know, something you go rah-rah at a football game. It's really part of them. So I really admire the way the Jesuits take that concept and implant it in the young men in a way that it grows throughout their lifetimes. And I've seen that with any number of people that we're still in community with who went to high school with Joe or went to Jesuit at some other time.
And he's a great example of when we say that formation never ends. So that, when you're done, you say, well, what about the profile to graduate at graduation? That, in some ways, maybe that's a little bit of a misnomer, because it's not just at graduation, but it should be the profile of a Jesuit man throughout his entire life.
Joe, on behalf of Jesuit Class of 71, all of my family, and all of everybody that loves you, congratulations on the Distinguished Alumni. Go Rangers and giggle.
Congratulations, Dad, on your award. Very proud of you. Very impressive award to receive, and good luck on your speech.
Congratulations, Dad, on being Distinguished Alumnus of the Year. Thanks so much for all you've done for the community and for your family. Love you.
I am extremely proud of you. I can't imagine anyone who is more deserving. I love it that you make me laugh, that you soften my hard sides, and that you are my best friend. I love you and congratulations.
Presenting the Distinguished Alumnus Award to Mr. Joe Hughes will be Principal Tom Garrison, President Mike Ersing, and Kevin Whalen from the Class of 77, our Alumni Association President. Mr. Hughes, if you come up.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Bob, for that fine rhodomontade. You would have to agree, as one cockalorum to another, that it doesn't get any better than this. Thank you for that great ovation. I knew this would be pretty easy and wouldn't have a teary moment at all, but I'm starting off that way. So if someone thinks they've seen John Boehner in the building, it may be me. This morning, before preparing to come to Jesuit, I spoke to our son Joe and daughter Katie and asked them if they thought it would be a great idea if I would wear my freshman beanie that we had to wear in 1967 at Jesuit. And they said, "Dad, anything you can do to cover that bald head of yours would be a good thing." So I don't know, but I certainly want to thank Mr. Ersing for the nomination. I'd like to thank Mr. Garrison for not disclosing my grades. And I would like to thank Mr. David Barron for allowing me to pay the final installments on my tuition. Holly, my beautiful and cherished wife, is sitting here before me. She's the one with the flashcards and giving me all of my cues right now. But we're both very thankful of this great honor. And it is something that we feel is undeserved. I know that there's only one name that is shown on the plaque, but it's the job of a couple in something in donating our efforts, time, talent, and treasure is something we did as a couple. So I thank my wife for that as well. But I would like to dedicate this day, this service, this event to the 19. I would not have attended Jesuit had it not been for the sacrifice of my mother and father, the financial sacrifice that they made in taking on additional jobs in order to pay the tuition. I will always remember and appreciate the faculty and staff at Jesuit for their guidance, for their example, and their patience with an active, boundary-testing teenager in the late 60s and 70s. You know, it's funny, so many names come to mind, as Holly mentioned in the presentation, of remembering teachers who were such an important part of your life. Right now, I'm sure most of you are wondering, why would you want to remember this teacher who's piling work on top of work at me? But some very special names come to mind with Mr. Bob Lanier, Jack Eifert, Father Marvin Kitten, Don Dorsey, and you know, there are even a few things that I remember about my freshman biology class. Actually, there are only two things. One is ribonucleic acid and endoplasmic reticulum. Now, I can't tell you what I would do with those two things if I put them together, or maybe it creates an atom bomb, I'm not sure. But it just sounds so cool to say endoplasmic reticulum to me, I don't know. But in accounting, I didn't get to say that many times. A lot of people have asked me over the course of this event if there are a lot of differences between the student of today and my time in the late 60s and early 70s. You know, I think they're very similar. You have a much larger campus, the students are taller, and some of you drive electric cars. But the goals, the hopes that you have are the same things that we thought of in the late 60s and graduating in 1971. All of us wanted a shot at a better life. This was a great step, a springboard to us to the next step. And all I would counsel you to is, whatever task you undertake, do the best that you can, put as much effort into it as you can, and be persistent. You may remember that at a time when bombs were raining on England during World War II, Winston Churchill had his favorite quote to the English people, and it was at a time of life and death: "Never, never, never give up." You know, a few years ago, we celebrated our 40th reunion, 40th anniversary of graduation, and we had a surprise guest who joined us. And this guest, Neil Harrison, was at our tenure at Jesuit. He was the assistant principal, and that translates to prefect of discipline or keeper of the penance hall door. We were very surprised to see him arrive at our 40th reunion, and Neil Harrison didn't drive to the reunion from Highland Park or from Plano. He drove from Marathon, Texas. And if any of you know where Marathon, Texas is, it's 7 hours and 10 minutes west of Dallas. It's a long drive by any measure. We had not seen him in these many years, as he had gone to West Texas to become a superintendent of a school district in Marathon. And he joined us to talk about old times, and probably spoke to some of us about some unfinished time in penance hall we still owed him. But it was something I will always cherish, the chance to see Neil Harrison at that reunion. Neil died 2 years ago, and his spirit is with us, and he will be in our thoughts for many years to come. I would also like to accept this award on behalf of the 19. The 19 classmates from the class of 1971 who are unable to be here because since our graduation, they have died. And I would ask if you would help me bring them here in spirit by answering here after I call the roll for the 19. Pat Prendergast. Here. Tom DeLoach. Here. Michael Wunderlich. Here. Dick Blum. Here. Danny Jacks. Here. Ken Dennis. Here. Frank Kutcher. Here. Chris Bird. Here. Bob Strong. Here. Mike Oftermatt. Here. Jim Daniels. Here. David Lamb. Here. Mike Reidinger. Here. John Franzen. Here. Mike Hewell. Here. Victor Cordova. Here. Gary Gribben. Here. And Phil Linehan. Here. I guess the final part of my talk today, and I thank you for your patience with me, is a thanks that I want to give to the student body, because you may not realize the important role you play in the history of Jesuit by being the keepers of the spirit of Jesuit. Jesuit, you've heard throughout the time that you've been here, as being unique. It certainly was a unique experience, a life-changing experience for me when I was a student here. But you maintain the traditions of the school, and you are the guardians of the spirit of Jesuit. And I would ask you for one last time to help me, if the students would stand at this time, please. Now, this may be a little unusual for you, but rather than answering here in a controlled voice, this is your chance to be as loud as you can. And, you know, I was a yell leader at Texas A&M, but I was never a cheerleader at Jesuit. I'd always aspired to be a cheerleader. And I guess today will be my one chance. My favorite cheer was Jesuit. But if you'll help me with this, and I'm sure you'll catch the cues. 35-0, 38-27, 52-0, 24-21, 50-0, 40-0, 43-0, 40-14. UIL District 9 6A champs. Give me a J! J! Cross-country team to Texas State Championship. Give me an E! E! Debate team sweep of Plano West. Give me an S! S! Jesuit Community Service Program. Give me a U! U! Jesuit Arts Program, band, art, theater, and more. Give me an I! I! World Championship Jesuit Robotics Club. Give me a T! T! What's it spelled? Jesuit! What's it spelled? Jesuit!